Tel Aviv. In 2012, she and her partner, who is now her husband, went on a wild journey to Brazil, specifically northeastern Brazil. And she's recounting their experience in song and in story tonight for us. And they left for 5 months. Imagine picking up and leaving it all behind for 5 months to go to Brazil. So we're looking forward to you. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you. Oi. I just said hi, obviously, in Portuguese. I have to admit it's a little disconcerting. I mean, you do your Rosetta Stone and you learn words and you want to run into people you meet and say, "Olá, como vai?" and all of a sudden they go, "Oi." I'm beginning to think that's what might be behind the theory that so many of the Brazilian people are actually doing. Anyway, that being said, I'm going to sing a song by Dorival Caymmi, Zichrono Livracha, and Ray Gilbert, Yibadel Chaim Aruchim. Minha janela vai sair pro mar, vou trabalhar, meu bem-querer. Se Deus quiser, quando voltar, tomar peixe bom, eu vou trazer. Meus companheiros também vão voltar. E a Deus do céu, vamos agradecer. A estrela d'alva me acompanha, iluminando meu caminho. Eu sei que nunca está sozinho, pois tem alguém que está pensando em mim. A estrela d'alva me acompanha, iluminando meu caminho. Eu sei que nunca estou sozinho, pois tem alguém que está pensando em mim. You might have heard the translation by Yaakov Shabtai. He did a pretty good job with it. כשספינתי תצא תפליג בים, אפרוס רשתי אהובתי. כשספינתי שלי תחזור מים, אביא לך דג אהובתי. כשיחזרו גם חבריי מים, אודה לאל הטוב שבמרומי. כוכב רחוק שלי לבני, תאיר דרכי אל תעזבני. או אז הבודד אינני, כי מישהו חושב עליי עכשיו. כוכב רחוק שלי לבני, תאיר דרכי אל תעזבני. או אז הבודד אינני, כי מישהו חושב עליי עכשיו. Anyway, well, Meir, that's my husband now, had a semester of sabbatical coming to him before retirement. We had heard a few things about the community of Recife. A friend of ours who teaches at Ben Gurion, he teaches history, had spent some time. And he said, you know, they're always looking for a macher, for a rabbi, for something. And we said, well, we don't know anything about it. In Columbia, South Carolina, where Meir grew up, there was a very prominent family named Nunez Carvalho, who said they knew something in their history had to do with Brazil, but they didn't know quite what. And then all of a sudden we get this invitation in the mail from Professor Caesar Sobrera of the Federal Rural University of Pernambuco to be a guest of the Anita Novinsky Chair for something called Nordeste Semita. Now that sounded familiar. They must have a department, just like at Ben Gurion, with ancient languages and Bible studies. Of course, it said Nordeste, which is northeast, and actually, that part of the ancient world that we come from is called Northwest. But I had a secondhand dictionary that kind of hinted they were a little bit interchangeable. So we said, okay, no problem. Well, of course, we wanted more information. What courses is he supposed to teach? Where are we supposed to stay? And after a very long time, we got another letter, this time requesting that he give 3 lectures, any choice of subjects. 3 lectures, that's the whole thing, and they're going to pay us to be there a whole semester? Then it got even stranger. It turned out we were coming during the vacation. And the semester wouldn't even start until we had been there like a month. This is flattering, but they must have wanted something else from us. We had very little contact with our hosts over time. A woman from the community wrote us saying how happy she would be to meet us. And somebody named Zvika wrote us in Hebrew and Latin letters inviting us to visit the local synagogue. It took the university months to send the confirmation of the invitation, and our host wrote that he would help us find a place to stay, that for the first week or so we would be in Olinda, near where he lived. Oops. Olinda, right. And then about a week before we left, we visited this friend who teaches history. He said, I want to talk to you before you go away. He showed us a film about the hidden Jews, descendants of the Marranos, the Anusim, many of whom lived in northeast Brazil. He said, you're going to meet some of these people. They're waiting for you. That's really what you're going for. Okay. He told us, and the film told us, about the history of the Anusim in Brazil, which I'll get into more detail later. Before we left, he said, oh, by the way, your Professor Sobrera is one of them too. Thought, oops. Time to put away the Armenian plate and get out of Challah. But the whole thing still seemed very strange. A whole sabbatical just to meet up with a few Eden. Well, to make a long story short, when we arrived, it was almost Sukkot. And as we were getting out of Recife Airport, the professor meets us in jeans and a t-shirt. And there's Zvika, who turned out to be his childhood friend who had done some volunteering with him on Borchayil. And they said, hi, can you lame? And so on Sukkot, we found ourselves in Recife at the Sinagoga Israelita do Recife, a very old synagogue that had been recently revived, mostly due to the interest of people who were beginning to connect to their long-hidden or almost forgotten Jewish identity. The group was small but lively, as you see in all shapes, sizes, and colors. Notice this is the sign, reading from left to right.
Oh my God.
We arrived for tefillah on the holiday morning, but of course in Brazil nothing starts on time. So about 2 hours later, there we were, and their mayor was reading the Torah for people who were literally choked up from excitement at having an aliyah. The synagogue was old, but the seats still had names on them, most of the names Ashkenazic. It was in a neighborhood that had once been Jewish, but now is a mess. It's like one big strip mall. During Chol HaMoed, we practiced hakafot with a maracatu drum band. Maracatu is an African-based rhythm, and you find maracatu drummers during Carnival and all kinds of other festivals. There we are in the Sukkah, with Tzvika explaining the etrog. Here they are practicing for hakafot. And every maracatu band has its, like a banner. So this one says, Filios de Judah, Bnei Yehuda, and here are maracatu players. And actually, we did do hakafot on Simchat Torah. Later in Chol HaMoed, we visited Beit Chabad in Recife, which is also very interesting, because usually Beit Chabad, everybody knows where it is, and there's a big sign out there. And here it's kind of closed. When you ring the doorbell, somebody wants to know who you are and what your intentions are, because they're a little bit worried about security. Anyway, we met some of the oldest residents of the community, and on Simchat Torah, we were out in the street in this really bad neighborhood, parading around with a not quite kosher Sefer Torah, and these local youth drumming maracatu as we sang Hoshiana. And we really didn't understand much of what was going on, or what we were doing there. Meanwhile, with literally no obligations after Sukkot, we took the time to get to know Recife and its sister city Olinda, where we ended up staying. soaked up a little culture. Now, it said in the invitation, Brazilian delicacies. The biggest delicacy in that area is tapioca. And they serve it out on the street, like wrapped in a dough. Basically, it's something that's like a combination of oatmeal and sawdust with a nice layer of Elmer's glue. That is a Brazilian delicacy, so I'm glad they didn't bring that. Anyway, we began to get to know the language. For example, if you can read Latin letters, you can understand everything from reading. You can't understand anything from hearing because the pronunciation is way out there. This is the currency and it's called a real. Real. Plural reais. There's, in general, a whole controversy about whether R is chet or not. Some people said Recife and some people said Recife. Don't even get me started on Rio de Janeiro. But a double R is definitely chet. So, for example, this is a cachorro. This is a cachorro candy. And if you go to the Chabad synagogue and you get a transliterated version of Tfilat Hashem, you'll find this prayer. Another interesting pronunciation is the letter X. It's like shin. So, for example, this is a peshe. And this is a sign that you see on many doors. Can you read it? And it means pull, go figure. One of the things that we noticed in Olinda especially, unlike our neighborhoods here in Israel, there were no cats in the street. We saw some street dogs, all very skinny and friendly and hopeful. But the only cats we saw were in houses, like sitting on the windowsill. Then when we spent a few days in Recife's upscale neighborhood, Boa Viagem, we saw a few signs like this. Beware, cow bravo. Bravo is like, mad dog. And, but we still didn't see any cats. A few dogs on leashes here and there. When we found our permanent place in Olinda, we were very close to the ocean and the fishermen's piers. And that's when we found the answer to our questions. Gato? Here they are. They're all around there. If I were a poodle in Boa Viagem, I'd stroll with my master on a leash of fine leather behind a tall fence with a sign that says cow bravo. I'd guard my good home and keep my family together. But I am a mongrel in the town of Olinda, a lonely cachorro who sleeps in the streets. The townspeople watch me, their eyes full of pity. They might throw me a smile or some cold tapioca to eat as I trot down the streets. Here and there I see gatos peering out of their windows in comfortable homes. I watch them with envy, wishing I were a gato, never cold, never hungry, and never alone. So I thought to myself one day as I walked down the street in Olinda, and then something stopped me up short. For what did I see? Un gato está dormindo na rua. A cat is asleep in the street. Now how can that be? I cried, Senor Gato, what fate has beset you to render you lonely and homeless. at the marina, so happy together. They work and they play. No collars or leashes or fences to enslave us. We're building a new world, a mundo novo. Come join us today. So I followed him down to see the cats who live at the marina. They hunt for their patient, no collars to irritate them. They sleep under trees and stars with their friends and their families. No spoiled children to tease them, no cais bravos to hate them. But at night I was drawn again to the square with its cafes, to the bright lights, the music, and the company of men. But my new friend whispered, come away, there's a barbecue going. And the sign says, cachorros quentes, run for your life, my friend. Since that day I stay with my new friends, the gatos. Together we're hunters, so nimble and clever. My brothers come join us, help us build our mundo novo. Cachorros y gatos, amigos forever. La, 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 la. Cachorros y gatos, amigos forever. We got comfortable in our posada in Olinda. Posada is somewhere on the line between a hotel, a hostel, and a hovel. And this one was actually quite nice, little studio apartments on the ocean. And the vacation ended and the strike began. And we first visited the university a month after we had arrived. We got a ride with our host, Professor Sobrero. Oh dear. You take your life in your hands when you get a ride with someone. We realized quite early that we didn't want to rent a car because most drivers see lanes as suggestions. Cabs are an exciting experience too. The driver asks you where you're going. He turns off the GPS, puts on an episode of his favorite TV series, picks up his cellular phone, and you're off. So the best option, of course, is the omnibus. Of course, it also has its quirks. For example, the buses in the city are not air conditioned. Did I mention that it was summer and we were very close to the equator? Intercity buses do have air conditioning, which means you need a smicha puch. The buses show their line names and numbers only on the front, not on the side or the back. So if you're walking down the street and a bus passes you by, you don't know if it was yours. Waiting at the stop, the parada, is not enough. You actually have to flag the bus down, and if you start too late or he doesn't see you, he can't even slow down. And when you get on the bus, the turnstile is inside it. But we had it easy because we were a pair of idosos, as they're depicted here. That's how they look on signs in the bus, and people often offered us seats. The signs tell you to be considerate of idosos, and also of obesos, and also of gestantes, of deficientes, not to mention women carrying bebé, colo. Buses got us everywhere, happily alive. We learned the names of the different lines, liking the way they rolled off our tongues, and not particularly liking the way we rolled off the bus at the end of the day. So I wrote a song about it, and any words you hear that are not in English are bus lines. Well, it's getting kind of late, time to get back to the posada, so we're waiting for a bus to stop at the parada, and the people are awaiting, and the traffic is a hopping. The buses keep on coming, but not one of them is stopping. stopping, if you're stopping, gotta flag them down. Tau amarelo, cajueiro, jaca, cachaca, cavalero. Rio no se casa callada, you gotta flag them down when you're in the parada. And we're off into the night with the people swaying left and right. There's a hairpin turn, hang on for your life, cause the receiving bus is like a roller coaster ride. Now if you're carrying a baby or you're visibly gestante or obeso or rotoso or perhaps it won't be so hard for you to ride through the streets, cause someone's sure to stand and offer you a seat. We have entrances and exits for the various and challenged, although even when you're sitting, it's hard to stay balanced. Put your hand on the handle of the seat before you. Bring your station early so they won't ignore you. Caixa de agua, Casa Amarela, São Lourenço, Santa Isabela, Jardim Atlântico, Rui Barbosa. Somebody is sure to get up for an Amidosa. Watch out, you can fall on your face, even when you sit in your special place. Just don't let go, hang on tight, cause the receiving bus is like a roller coaster ride. At last the bus is stopping. We get off at Parada. And from here it's just a short walk to get back to our Cruzada. But our ears are ringing, and our knees are shaking, and both our butts are aching from the bumps they've taken. Dois irmãos, aguazinha, rota de fogo, mostardinha. Up the stairs, and we'll call it a night, 'cause we rode on a Recife bus and we'll survive. A few years before we took this trip, I entertained a lot of couch surfers from all over the world. And I thought it would be a nice idea to meet the Recife couch surfing group. They have meetings from time to time. We came to one, they sit over a glass of beer. Most of them younger than we are. They said things like, oh, we wish our parents would do some traveling too. Anyway, people said, you're from Israel, are you Jewish? And when we said we were, a few of the girls said, we might be too. I said, might be? Oh yes, they said, it's a well-known thing. When the Moranos became new Christians, many took last names that were trees. Here, my name is Azeitunas, that's a tree. My name is Calleros, that's a tree. We didn't really pay this too much mind, we just sat talking with them and all. The next day, Mayor says, I have an idea. I know Bible. I have to improve my Portuguese. I'm going to get a Portuguese Bible and read it, and then, I'll understand. Get more words. So he did. And in his reading, he came to where Abraham and Lot's family passed through Alone Mamre. And in Portuguese, it was Os Carvalhos do Mamre. So Carvalhos is the name of a tree, and these founding fathers in Columbia, South Carolina might well have been Anosim. The next day we visited a museum, which is the home of Gilberto Freire, a well-known sociologist and philosopher from Brazil. And he was known as a collector of all kinds of cultural artifacts. So we found all kinds, including a Chanukia and an Aron Kodesh, which they said, oh yeah, these are Jewish things. And in the gift shop, we found a book written by our own host, Professor Silveira, named Nordesta Semita. And suddenly it hit us. There wasn't any Semitics department at the University of Pernambuco. Nordesta Semita was a chair for the study of the Jewish origins of Northeast Brazil. We said, this must really be why we're here, to meet these people. The university's just an excuse. They had to get us here, so they used it. And though we did more traveling, and Mayer did give his 3 requisite lectures, and we were there for Carnival, the focus of the trip became meeting and talking to as many of these former new Christians, now coming back to their Judaism, as we could. So just a few words about them. The Spanish Inquisition was about converting the Jews. The Portuguese weren't satisfied with that. They kept a watch on all the new Christians to make sure they were good Christians. They took it further. And when the new Christians went to the New World, Brazil, in about 1500, the Inquisition followed them there. They continued to practice their Judaism in secret, or not, as they became an integral part of Brazilian life. Now, the Dutch arrived towards the end of the 16th century and took over Brazil in 1630. And for the Jews, it was time to come out of the closet. They were very happy. But then in the 1650s, the Portuguese started fighting back. And in 1654, Jews fled Recife. Now, everybody's heard the story and history of the 23 Jews from Recife who got on a boat and went into Amsterdam. There had to have been more, because they found themselves all up and down the eastern seaboard. They got as far inland as Philadelphia, Baltimore. A lot of Jews from Recife came to America. New Holland was officially given back to Portugal. And now the Jews were not only Jews, they were collaborators with the Dutch. So they were persecuted all around. They fled into the rural areas. When they were caught, Moranos on trial had to wear dunce caps, by the way. Okay. Some went into more of the center of Brazil, Minas Gerais, and they were involved in gold mining. Most went into northeast Brazil, mainly the provinces of Pernambuco, where we were, Paraíba and Alagoas. And some became sugar plantation owners, other poor people becoming small farmers. And I have to add that some of the more affluent of these people were not altogether innocent. Not a few became slave owners on the sugar plantations and in the mines. The saddest stories are of the gold mines. The conditions inside the mines were unbelievable. The gold lay in seams in the rock. It's not like North America where people went panning for gold. There were tunnels following the seams that they built into the rock. And because they were narrow, they didn't have to dig a tunnel. They could just send slave boys into the seam. These boys would fit into the narrow channels with hammers and chisels. They couldn't turn around. They would smash the rock in front of their faces, gather up the debris, and then somebody would get hold of their legs and pull them out. And this gold dust and other dust were very bad for them. Since the tunnels were only wide enough for their bodies, they really didn't get enough air. And many of these young boys, I would say most of them, didn't make it till the age 21. They died of lung disease before that. I wish I could say the Jews were not a part of this, but in some places they were. At any rate, the conversos tried to keep up their tradition in secret. In Olinda, a prison was set up where Christians suspected of being secret Jews were investigated and tortured. Today it's an art museum. Other places we were shown were churches with synagogues inside them, like the church was just a facade. According to local culture, the first such prisoner who was tortured was Branca Diaz, a woman who owned and ran a finishing school for girls. No one knows who turned her in, but she just disappeared. People directed us to the site of her school. Today it's a tourist spot with shops, a dance area, and